yet. I'll launch the polls when they're ready. I promise. You've got to be kidding me, right, meow?
And I got an alum in here, INI, who for fellow Illini. This is my night.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, the webinar is filling up, and it's already a minute after the hour. So why don't I start the housekeeping real quick, Dr. Marks, and then we'll get this baby started. All right, everybody. Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Cat Handling, Not Wrangling in the Exam Room, sponsored by Zoetis and powered by the American Association of Feline Practitioners. This is part of our Perfect Your Practice program. My name is Matt Bubala. I'm excited to be moderating here today. I have a few housekeeping items to cover about this program and the webinar platform. If you have a question for our speaker, please send it through the chat button at the bottom of your webinar panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will do our best to address them if we have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. A follow-up email with your CE certificate will be sent within 48 business hours of the webinar's conclusion. If you do not receive that email, please check your spam filter. As you exit today's webinar, you'll receive a follow-up survey. Please, please, please be sure to complete this survey for us. It means a lot. Also, we will be doing some polling with you during this event, so be ready for some of those to pop up on your screen. Now, I would like to introduce you to our presenter for this evening. You've all been getting emails from her each week as part of Perfect Your Practice, and now I'm excited to introduce you to Dr. Natalie Marks. She's my good friend and amazing mom, and a nationally renowned veterinarian and the former practice owner of Blum Animal Hospital in Chicago. Good evening, Dr. Marks.
Hello, Matt. Thank you for that kind introduction. And hi to everybody who's tuning in tonight. I see I'm already getting some great cat puns, and I'm feeling excited and ready to go. We are going to talk about handling of cats. We're going to commit, if you've been stressed and scruffing cats and struggling with cats and you're chasing and jumping and doing all these things to handle cats in your exam room in a wrangling way, tonight is the night that we throw that all aside. We're going to learn about some great tips and tricks to not only understand cat body language, but understand our own body language and how we react to cats in the exam room. Before I get off our title slide, I just wanted to share Tommy here, who is a stunning just creature, right? Looking out his screen door. And if you didn't immediately see his sister Izzy giving him the look of death from behind of why he got the prime location watching the bird feeders, I think. But interesting just to watch the difference in body language just in these two housemates in this one instance, and how much we can tell just from how they're showing different parts of their body in different positions, how they feel in the moment. And that's really important for us to be able to translate that into the exam room. Thank you again to Zoetis for sponsoring this presentation for the Perfect Your Practice program in partnership with AAFP, and for their ongoing commitment to the betterment of our industry and our patients, and of course our teams as well. So tonight we're going to go over quite a bit in a short period of time, but our 5 main goals are for us to really understand what really stresses cats out, especially in the exam room, whether it's with us or when they're just with their pet parent. And then we're going to learn and transition into the cat's sweet spot. What do they love? Where do they like being touched? Where don't they like being touched? How can we interpret some of their different behaviors and movements in the exam room, and how that translates to how we act? And then we'll talk about how we can make our exam room as prepared as possible for our feline patients, how we can reduce their fear and also their pain, a hot topic right now, right, in feline medicine. And then how that all translates into building that better bond so that we can see cats more often and see their parents more often.
All right, it's time for us to launch a poll. Let's see how well this works. I'm going to launch this poll, and hopefully you all have that on your screen right now. In the exam room, what do you think stresses a cat the most? Is it cat carrier stress, handling that's not low stress, noxious odors, or being with new humans? We'll give everybody a chance to answer. But Dr. Marks, it's interesting to me, we talk so much about the stresses at home, getting cats to the veterinary office, but now we're going to concentrate on actually in the exam room. Why is that so important?
Yeah, because, there isn't just one thing. And not to give this poll away, but there's no wrong answer here, right? These are all potential stresses in the exam room. But I think that's the most important thing to remember, is that there are multiple. So we can't just think that just because we have a pheromone, everything's going to be fine. Or just because we have a high reward or yummy treat, everything's going to be fine. We have to think in a more complex way and sort of a well-rounded way, that there are lots of different senses that cats can have be stressed. And so as we go through this next section, we'll talk about some of these things. But I'm curious to see what everyone on this webinar thinks.
Well, as of right now, it's pretty evenly divided, 35%, 24%, 20, 21%. But I don't know if you get to see this, Dr. Marks. Do you know what the answer is? Oh, okay. So I want you to guess. What do you think what's 35%?
I'm going to think handling that's not low stress.
Handling that's not low stress, 35%. Cat carrier stress, 24%. Being with new humans, 21%. And noxious odors, 20%.
Well, I love that we have so many different opinions there. That's really important. And obviously the handling is a huge part, right? That's the foundation of how we work with cats. We're going to go over some of the sensory stuff first, and then we'll dive right into handling, I promise. So let's go through, again, what really stresses cats out. So the first we're going to talk about is odors. And cats are macrosmatic, which means that their sense of smell drives their behavior. And so a lot of things that we can have in the exam room or lobbies or on us can actually be pretty noxious to cats. And instead of them either being tolerant of them or just kind of sensing them and going and doing something else, what actually can happen, unfortunately, is it can sit with them and create an incredibly stressful body language or body position. And some of these things include air fresheners, disinfectants. We'll go through that in a minute a little bit more about what bleach actually does to the olfactory sense of cats. Rubbing alcohol, this is a huge one. A lot of us kind of have gotten into the habit of dousing cats when we're trying to draw blood or place catheters or doing other things where we're wetting the hair down. Can be incredibly noxious to a lot of cats. The smell of blood actually can be as well. Deodorants, some perfumes, and unfamiliar clothing. So a lot of times what I'll do is tell pet parents to come in the carrier with maybe their favorite t-shirt from home, the cat parent, right? Or something that reminds them of home, because if they have that, we can hopefully keep their cat in their carrier with that familiar piece of clothing to help, again, reinforce that positive sense of smell. This is a huge thing because unfortunately what ends up happening is we often will make the sense in the room appealing to the humans in the room. So especially in our feline exam space or feline exam room only or feline lobby area, whatever we're talking about, we really need to cater to the patient, not to us. The second thing that's pretty stressful to cats are visual cues. And what I mean by that actually is the sight of other cats. You've probably noticed this if you hospitalize cats in your hospital and you maybe don't currently have a separate cat area, or you have a cat ward, but the cages are facing each other and cats are seeing cats. And it's incredibly stressful. So the first thing I want to stress, no pun intended there, is to keep other patients away from a cat's line of sight. They should be the only cat that they see in the exam room. They should be the only cat, hopefully, that they're around diagnostically. And hopefully, again, if they have to be hospitalized, you can do something, a towel over the door, a divider, making sure cats only look one direction so that they don't see that other feline. Separate feline entrances, of course, if it works for your hospital, that's amazing. That is not a requirement to be cat-friendly certified, so I just want to stress that. We can do lots of other things as workarounds, having cats waiting in their car and going right into the exam room, and certainly separating. If you had a separate feline waiting room, that's amazing. But again, not essential. We did not have a separate waiting room, but we divided our lobby to have a separate cat waiting area where we put a divider in. And that could be as simple as 2 bookshelves back to back. It could be plants. It could be just something, again, to divide the space. We want to always encourage pet parents to come in and immediately cover those carriers with towels. If they can come from home with a towel that smells like home and pheromones, even better. And then we want to minimize harsh lighting. You'd be surprised at how even just dimming the lights will relax everyone in the exam room, including us. So also very important to keep in mind the lighting that we're projecting. Cats are also stressed by auditory decibels that are pretty loud, sudden movements, but things that we may not be, or it might actually be white noise to us at this point from working in hospitals. Things like phone pages, fans that are running, any kind of background music you have playing on your speaker system internally. Those things can actually be very, very stressful without us even knowing to cats. And also our own tone of voice. I have a tendency to get louder and more dramatic as I teach. So I'm going to be conscious of that right now and try to turn my decibels down too. But having things like classical background music, having a sound machine, cats also love reggae. So if you want to play a little low Bob Marley in the exam room, or you have something like Through a Cat's Ear, which is pre-planned out playlists that are very appealing and calming to cats. Those are really important in that exam room.
All right, it's time for our second polling question. We wanted to ask you, and we'll launch this right now on your screen. What is the most obvious sign of stress in cats that you see at your practice? Dilated pupils, ears pinned backwards, tucked tail, or vocalization? Dr. Marks, I know we're looking for the most obvious sign from everybody's opinion here, but for you, is it often that you just see one, or is it often a combination of signs?
Well, I think when you're first starting to learn cat body language and recognize how they're communicating to us, we might just hone in on one. Like for me, the easiest one to learn was ears, because they're pretty obvious, right? Ears are forward, it's great. If they turn to the side or start pinning backwards, we're worried, right? Or flatten out. But as you get more comfortable reading, again, how a cat's communicating to us, there are lots of ways that they're showing us body language, including dilation of pupils, that tucked tail. Vocalization would be one of the last things that we see, but we do see it in stressed or fearful cats. I'd love to hear what everybody else thought.
Well, what's your guess? What do you think? It's quite tight, really. 36%, 34%, 20%, and 10%. So what do you think's leading off?
I'm thinking either ears or tail.
Tail is last, only
Really?
10%. Only 10% are saying that's the most obvious sign. Ears is second. Ears pinned backwards, 34%. So what's at 36? Is it dilated pupils or vocalization?
I'm going to say pupils.
You are correct. 36% said dilated pupils, 20% saying vocalization.
Well, the good news here is everybody's right. Those are all signs of stress. The thing is, for cats show different body parts at different times and levels of stress. So what we need to know is what that cat's sweet spot really is and how we can, again, best work with them in the exam room. So let's look at what a relaxed cat would look like. I mean, this sweetheart, I just want to curl up and snuggle on the couch with tonight, has a beautiful soft face. The ears are forward. The pupils are beautiful and almond shaped. You can see this cat's tail is away from the body, and he has this sort of very, very relaxed musculature as if, I own this space, which of course they do, right? But unfortunately, we don't always see this in our exam room. So instead, I hate to say this, we often see this cat. And sometimes when I give this part of a lecture, I often get a lot of chuckles and kind of like, oh, I had that cat today, which I totally get. The thing that I had to learn about that is that this poor cat is at the highest level of fear that this cat can show us. And so when there is hissing and the lips are really tight and drawn back and those ears again are out to the side, the pupils are really dilated, that tail is tucked very tight against the body, and we have that crouched, arched back, that posture is an incredibly scared, fearful, stressed, anxious cat, all of the above. And that is, unfortunately to us, the last cat we want to touch, because that cat is telling us, I have never been more scared in my life, get away from me. We, unfortunately, and very early in my career, I completely admit, I would keep going with these cats because I had the mentality, I just got to get this done. Thankfully, we have had so much advancement in feline medicine and behavior that we know this is not a good place for anyone to keep going without an intervention of some kind, which we're going to talk about. And I see people making comments about gabapentin that were actually, that's coming up. I promise you're segueing beautifully because it is one of our best friends with cats. But I hope that what we take from this stress cat is this is not a cat to continue with at this level of stress. We've got to stop, think about another plan and how we can reduce that stress and fear as much as we can. Okay. So let's talk about each of these body parts. We'll start with ears. Remember, we're going to take this arrow for the next few slides as an arrow of escalation, right? So that relaxed cat, that beautiful soft face, remember those ears were forward. As a cat starts to stress, it starts to turn backwards and then lower flat, right? As you can see this cat. If we start to see those changes, the key for us to be the best cat practitioners we can be is for us to notice if suddenly it starts to turn, right? If there's any movement towards stress, we don't want to wait until the cat has completely flattened. Okay. That's again, when we're looking at ears, see the spectrum. We don't want to wait to the height of escalation. Same with eyes. A relaxed cat has almond shaped pupils. Beautifully, those kind of wide and slit pupils that we want to see. Progressive dilation happens with stress. And then when we get to a point of complete fear, actually what ends up happening is they become more oblong. They're still more dilated than they were at the beginning. And so if you've missed that progressive dilation, this cat is very, very scared, as you can see, right? So we want to, again, just like with ears, be cueing in on those eyes and looking to see if any dilation is occurring. That's a point where we say, okay, we got to rethink how we're handling or how we're progressing with this exam or diagnostics. The last big thing, of course, is body shape. Wouldn't it be lovely if every cat came in, jumped up willingly on our exam table, sprawled out with their tail and their body just kind of, like Jabba the Hutt and said, I'm here, do whatever you need. I don't think that's happened to me more than a couple times in over 20 years. So what we need to think about is how we can get cats to be in their most relaxed state, understanding that as their feet come closer to the body, as they start to take their head from up and start to lower it down, their back starts arching, their tails start tucking, they're making themselves as small as possible. That's when we're headed towards our really, really scared cat that we met before, right? This is, again, very progressive, although some cats can escalate, from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. But the key is the cue of what does it look like as it gets worse, right? So our goal is relaxed, tail away, everybody sprawled out. This is a cat that's incredibly fearful. There's a few more body languages and behaviors that I want to decode over the next few minutes that are associated with things that we might see in the exam room and that other cat parents might think or misinterpret potentially at home. So I want to just make sure we're all on the same page. Allo rubbing, which is what you see this cat is rubbing up against us, or against someone here, probably mom or dad, right? Allo rubbing is actually when cats are rubbing up against each other. So they often will do either cheek rubbing or they'll rub along the whole body. And that is a very positive behavior for cats to demonstrate. It's an affiliation that they're all in the same pack. It's a way to kind of keep their odors maintained and also for them to sort of mark each other. It's very positive. But when cats come up and do this, right, where they're kind of doing the zigzag in between legs and rubbing up against us, that is a very direct request for food or affection. So if pet parents are asking you about that, that's, again, a very positive sign, but oftentimes it can lead to them using that to train mom and dad. This is when I get food and this is when I get treats. So we need to be careful that that doesn't end up in an obese indoor cat, which often can happen. A lot of pet parents might also ask, or think, wow, my cat is sort of holding my hand, right? When they have their claws outstretched and clasping a human hand. We often see this behavior when cats are laying on their back and a pet parent or a veterinary team member is sort of touching or rubbing the stomach. This is actually a sign of, I'm going to say, increasing arousal. So this is not a relaxed position for cats. They're very on guard at this point. And we can see that increase if we continue to do that behavior, and it can lead to reactivity or aggression, either to the person or the veterinary team member, or if there's another cat that can have displaced aggression. So we definitely want to be careful that we teach and understand that this is not a wanted position for a cat, and cats definitely don't like being on their back or having their stomachs touched normally. The other thing we might see in the exam room is the freeze. And for many years, when I was a young grad, I would see a cat sort of freeze on the table and I'd be like, awesome, they're just going to sit here for me. This is great. I can do my whole exam. Not understanding that that cat was terrified. And so that acquiescence, that sort of, I've given up, my lack of movement, that is a fearful pose. And that after a period of time can actually go to, just like with the claws, increased arousal and aggression. So if a cat is freezing, please don't make the same mistake that I made, again, in my younger years, thinking this is amazing. This cat is just sort of being tolerant of me. They're not being tolerant. They're escalating. And if I had the chance to go back and look at those cats' ears and eyes and tail and the rest of the body position, I'm sure that body language would have cued me in that this is not a cat that feels good. Finally, there's other signs of anxiety you might see in the exam room. And that would include if you see your cat on an exam table or another sort of stainless steel surface or tile, you might see sweat from their paws. You can see changes in vocalization. And I want to, again, make sure everybody understands that is in the later stages of stress and fear. That is not an initial reaction for cats. So if you are hearing growling, hissing, spitting, all of that, that is an advanced stage of fear. And then displacement behavior. And this is one that I think is not very commonly understood as far as from the veterinary teams, is that when cats self-groom in the exam room, that is typically a self-soothing kind of behavior that they're using to try to calm down their anxiety. So even though grooming is a wanted behavior and it's a fastidious part of their day, and they certainly do that only when they feel good most of the time, in this position, you can see those cats' ears, even this cat, are starting to come to the side. This cat's anxious. And so keep that in mind when you see that in the exam room. Finally, all of those things, if we're mentioning that, and we're seeing and noticing ears and eyes and tail position and body language and all of this stuff, the one thing we have to keep in mind too is our body language. Our body language, our team's body language, anybody from our hospital that's going to be interacting. We need to avoid direct eye contact with cats. They do not feel good with that. Neither do dogs, but avoiding that until they're in a relaxed space. It's best if you can approach at the same level. I'm getting older, so it's not as easy for me to do this as it used to be, but I like to get down on the floor, or I like to get in the chair or wherever that cat is. So I'm not standing and the cat's, way down on the floor. We don't want to stand over cats. We want to talk in that very calm and quiet and positive voice. And unlike me, where this is incredibly hard to do, with the cats, we want to minimize hand gestures and make slower, deliberate movements. Not sudden movements, not doing a lot of talking with our hands. That can be very distracting and stressful to cats.
Dr. Marks, real quick before I launch this next polling question, Perlita wrote, does chirping count as stress? What stage would that be if considered a sign of stress?
Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah, so chirping actually can have, just like purring, a few different sort of kind of associations, I guess I would say. And I, just like what we just saw with the self-grooming, what I would encourage everybody to do is if they hear chirping, to at the same time, look at the cat's body language. Because just like I said with purring, if we have a cat that's in a relaxed state and starting to do just a little bit of chirping and looking around and kind of being stimulated, especially if they have some kind of really cool design in the room, or maybe there's a toy that they're kind of getting interested in and wanting to kind of explore, that's great. But if we start to see the ears turning backwards and being pinned, if the pupils are dilating, if they're starting to show a little bit more of deliberative crouching movement, we want to make sure that we, again, take all of that into account. Just like that first polling question about what do we see as stress, we have to take that whole picture to make sure that we interpret that correctly.
And real quick, Pamela wrote, interesting that self-grooming is a self-soothing adaptation. Thanks for including this behavior. And we've had some questions about whether the recording of this is available afterwards. It's not going to be, but Dr. Marks will give out her email at the end of this. If you have any questions, she will answer any and all of them. And we certainly welcome you to join the Perfect Your Practice program if you're not already part of it, so we can get you lots of information every week with a quick, short email that comes to you. So we'll get you more information on that. All right, let's launch this question. Here it is, everybody. Do you have a separate exam room for your feline patients only? Do you have a separate exam room? Yes or no? But Dr. Marks, what's interesting to me is, you and I have been in so many practices around the country doing different projects. And sometimes, especially the practice you were at Blum, you only have so much space. You don't always have a lot of options to be able to close down exam rooms and make them feline only or dog only. So is it possible, and does it still make sense, maybe on just a certain day, can you do it just by day, or do you have to separate out completely if you're going to do that?
No, I love that you're saying that, because you don't have to have a separate exam room for cats only. It would be great if you could, but if you're thinking to yourself, like, right now, my clinic doesn't have this, oh my God, I'm so far behind. You're not. There are lots of ways that you can get around that. If you don't have the space, you don't have the capacity, maybe don't have the team members to allow that, you can have cat only times of the day. A lot of people just choose Wednesdays because it typically is it has been, but historically, not now since the pandemic, maybe not, but it's been a slower time of the week. So a lot of people will have cat, Wednesday afternoon, or cat happy hour, where from 5 to 7 cats come in only, and dogs are not seen except on emergency. You can also do rotations. You can look at your hospital and think, maybe I don't have to have a traditional exam room. Maybe what we did is we converted a smaller unused office into a feline exam space. It doesn't have to be exam room. We don't need a ton of stuff in there, right? So think about how you could be creative at your hospital and just have a space where cats predominantly stay. We don't want, again, smells from dogs. We don't want, to be honest, we don't want canine parents in there, right? The cat parents and dog parents are totally different. They're totally different. So think about how you could maybe utilize a space. Like, even we used to use it in our ultrasound room. We used to see cats because it was a small space and it was kind of by itself, and we didn't really use it that much, right? So maybe that's what we need to do, is not think, gosh, it has to be one of our traditional exam rooms on that first floor or wherever your main area is. It can be anywhere else. So be creative. You don't have to be locked in, but it looks like
it's going to be helpful because only a third have a dedicated room. So for the other 63%, there's some tips on how to make it work without.
That's right. So let's talk about the exam room itself. And remember, I talked about preparation really is the key. The last thing we want to do is go into a feline exam without having as much as possible of what we need, not just for the handling, but also, again, potentially diagnostically. So I like to have sort of an exam room toolbox. So if you are moving throughout your hospital seeing cats, or if you have one space where all this can live, or like I said, if you're getting creative and maybe you're going into an old office or an ultrasound area or a larger closet, whatever it is, right? You just need a space sort of off by itself. So here, to me, are some must-haves if you don't have your own space, right? So if you don't have your own space, then think about those dedicated hours, right? It's one or the other. You don't have to have both. But, in a perfect world, you have your own space. If you don't, have at least some time during that week where cats are featured, right? It's their time. Having treats, we'll talk about some of those in a minute. If there's only one thing you take from tonight, get a bunch of really good towels, not the kind that have holes all over them and are ragged because we bleached them a million times and are discolored, but the type that you would put out right in your guest bathroom. And those need to be impregnated with pheromones. So if that's all that we do, have those, because they're so essential to low stress handling. Catnip is really, really helpful. Having some kind of elevated space for that cat carrier. This is an example here on the screen of what we did. We call it cat carrier parking. It's just a little side table where the cat carrier can go. So cats are off the floor. We don't want them on the ground, right? Elevated space, the syringes out of the wrappers. That sound, that crinkle of taking syringes out is really stressful to cats. And then again, in a perfect world, we would have silent or very, very, very quiet clippers, because that also can be stressful. Here's, and again, feel free to screenshot this. I know, as Matt mentioned, I send out my email, or I'll put my email up at the end. I'm happy to send you. I know some people are mentioning, I'd love to share this with my teams. I can send you a PDF of this to share. I'm happy to do so. We just really want cats and teams to feel good. So at the end of this, just copy my email down. Here are some of the cat approved treats. Screenshot this, because these are great options. If you're like, I'm just giving tuna. I don't know what else to do. These are really great. Churu is probably, I should put that on the top because I think that's like the cat's meow, no pun intended there. But things, if you didn't remember or didn't know, cats love marshmallows and they love green olives. So if you're trying to kind of find economical ways to keep treats rather than churu to every cat, those are some ways that you can buy them more wholesale or in bulk, Costco, and divvy them out. So the meet and greet. When cats come into a space, on average, they need 20 to 45 minutes to acclimate. Okay, I know you're looking at me through the screen and going, you're insane, Dr. Marks. There's no way I have 20 to 45 minutes. And I agree with you. I don't have 20 to 45 minutes to see each cat. So that's perfect world. But reality means that as soon as they can get into that exam room, that carrier opens and we want the cat to have the ability to explore the room on their own. So open the door while they're taking the history. That's a perfect time to offer a little bit of churu, right? Something really, really yummy. If it's a playful kitten, put some great toys out and let them explore. If it is a senior cat, we want to make sure that they have the ability to go to a soft surface where they can have, again, comfortable bedding. I like fleece blankets. Those are really helpful. If there's a patient with osteoarthritis, same thing. And if a cat still doesn't want to come out of the carrier, then we want to remove the top and place a towel between the two halves. As you see, Dr. Rodan, one of our wonderful colleagues and feline experts, showing you on the very far right as she's doing that. For me, and we'll talk about carriers in a minute, I love the top, the carriers that are top opening or loading, and certainly not as big of a fan of these, just obviously because of ease. Now, a lot of people say, okay, that sounds great in theory, Dr. Marks, and I opened the carrier door, and 5 minutes later, this cat won't come out. And 10 minutes later, this cat won't come out. And I've got to keep going with my day. And this just isn't going to work. What do we do if the cat says, this is where I'm going to stay, right? This cat is saying, I'm relaxed in here and I'm not going to move. Well, we can take the top off and work with the cat in the carrier. And I do that actually probably more often than not now. You can do a lot just by, again, keeping them in the carrier and moving different limbs along with the cat's natural body movement. We can also support the caudal abdomen and back legs as we kind of lift them out and then slide a towel around the cat so that they feel that they can go into sort of that hidey space. Remember, cats feel better when they're not visible and they have that advantage. What we don't want to do is reach in and grab the cat or dare I say the S word, scruff the cat. We don't want to take the carrier and tip it over and sort of shake the cat out. We don't want to use cat bags or cat nets or any kind of grasping tool to pull them out. There are other strategies. So if your cat is that fearful in the carrier, maybe again, that's a time where we say, okay, today's not the day. We need to either reschedule or give them something and give them some time and move on to another appointment and come back to this cat after they've had some time to relax. The other thing is we need to be flexible. A lot of times I think we go into an exam and we think, okay, this cat is going to be on the table with me. I've got my towel, I got my pheromones, I got my treats, all my stuff's right here. But the cat says, I want to sit on my mom's lap. Or I think I'm going to choose this cat bed over here. Or I'm just going to stay in the carrier. So we need to be flexible and keep familiar bedding accessible. So for example, you can see how this cat went from the top of the carrier coming off. So you saw last slide, Dr. Rodan, kind of putting that towel in there. Now this cat's kind of like, this isn't so bad here. I think I'm okay. I think I'm going to explore. There's churu and a really comfy bed right next to me. So I think I'll just go there. So giving them that option, you see Dr. Rodan is at cat level, not standing over this cat, and giving them, again, you can stay in the carrier, you can choose this bed, I'll work with you. And that's really important. And this, I want to make sure everybody understands, Dr. Rodan has been doing this for a little bit of time. I'm not going to give away her age either. And she's an expert in cat handling. So she does make this look very easy. And this may not be what happens the first time you try this tomorrow or the next day when you're back in practice. But if you try, it will get much easier every time. And these options will just come to you innately. I'm going to offer bedding. I'm going to give churu. I'm going to put that nice warm pheromone towel down. These are ways that cats are going to relax, and then you'll relax as well.
Dr. Marks, that middle photo made it look like Dr. Rodan is actually some sort of Jedi master, like she just pointed at that bed. Next thing you know, the cat's in the bed. Boom.
Well, I think she is the feline Jedi master. My goodness, she's amazing. So here she is showing us a little bit about the exam itself. So remember, for cats, the head and neck are preferred areas that they do like to be touched. So you can start by massaging between the eyes. So this is sort of a sweet spot. And then the cranial aspects of the ears. So I try to move from here to here and back and forth to get them to relax to my touch. And cats will. You can also see that she's starting, I stopped this picture a little too early, but you can see by her left hand, it's starting to move in front of the chest. And that's not pressure. That's just sort of a roadblock so that cat knows they're not going to move forward. And we can do hopefully as many of our exam room movements as well as diagnostics in that same room. Remember what I said about acclimation. As soon as we move that cat to another space, that time clock starts over. So we got to wait for them to acclimate. So again, the more we can be prepared, the more we can do in the exam room, and starting at the least stressful place first is always helpful. So as an example, if you have a cat that has hind limb or lumbosacral osteoarthritis, which we know up to 90% of cats over the age of 10 can have some kind of radiographic evidence, right? It's a really huge population of cats that we know that they could potentially have discomfort when we're touching back there. So do I want to start with a cat by pulling on their hind limbs on the first time I touch them? Absolutely not. We're going to start, again, head, neck, massaging in between, in front of the ears, working our way back to the potentially most uncomfortable or maybe most stressful part of that exam. And then I cannot stress this enough. Every cat needs to be weighed every visit. If that can't happen, then we need to encourage those clients to potentially invest in one of these scales at home so that we can get an idea. You can see that this cat here, again with Dr. Rodan, we've already teared out that scale. We've put that nice warm towel down so we know it's already zeroed out. And then that cat is saying, whoa, wait a minute. There's some chewer over here too. So I'm going to check this out and kind of make myself comfortable. We can train cats to enjoy the scale, again, using treats and towels and letting them know nothing else is going to happen. You're just going to hang out and get some yummy food. Same with blood draws. Here's a big thing that I think stresses a lot of us out is we don't want to try to draw blood in the exam room in front of a cat parent, especially if you're newer to the profession or newer in your career. You know, that can be a really kind of awkward and kind of intimidating thing to do. But for those that are comfortable and are starting to get more comfortable, this is a great way to do it. So you see Dr. Rodan showing two different positions here. One is if we're trying to get a cephalic, and one is if we're trying to get a jugular, which of course would be the more common one. We want to face the cat outward towards a technician or client. And for some cat parents, if you start to say, I think I'm going to go ahead and we'll start with our blood draw here. A lot of cat parents will just say, okay, I'm just going to go to the bathroom, or I'm going to wait in the lobby, or I'm going to go make a phone call, and that's cool too, right? We want to keep cats in the exam room. So that's the thing. We don't want to keep moving them. We want to hold their head and their body in a natural position. You see this cat kind of has its right hind leg sort of lazy, right? Like a lazy sit. And that's how this cat wanted to be. And that's cool. We don't need that to be kind of all, rigid and military for this blood draw. We just need access to the jugular or the cephalic. If you have a cat that reacts very strongly to needle, you can very, very lightly apply a topical anesthetic. That there are obviously lots of creams out there that can be applied, especially to the jugular, just to help minimize that stress. And then finally, all assume the blood pressure position. Please do your best to try and do blood pressures in exam rooms instead of moving cats. We know how challenging it can be to get an accurate blood pressure. And this cat is showing Dr. Rodan, hey, I'm cool, just kind of chilling in your arms. She's got the tail very loosely held and ready for her veterinary technician to come in, place a cuff and get us a pretty accurate sample of blood pressure here. So keep in mind, again, the more we move cats, the more stressed these cats are. The more we can do in the exam room, the better it's going to be for all of us.
Dr. Marks, right before we jump into the polling question, I'm going to say that there's a lot of great activity in the chat room, a lot of people sharing tips with each other,
Awesome.
and we'll try to get to some of your questions at the end for sure. One thing that's being bandied about and tips are being given out is the 15-minute exam and how tough it is sometimes to do all of this within a 15-minute exam.
That is. And I feel for you because I think it's hard to do anything in a 15-minute exam, especially because a lot of our clients come 8 minutes into that exam, right? Because they're late. So with a 15-minute exam, I think the most important thing is for hopefully you to be doing that with a team member. So if you can't change the times of your exam itself, maybe you can change who's helping you with that exam. So what I mean by that is as soon as that client's exam starts, I would have that cat come right into the room, open that door, and have the technician, again, the room's hopefully prepared, right? So you have the towels, you have a cat bed, you have churu or another yummy treat, you have classical music playing, you have lights a little dimmer, and that cat's like, wow, this is great. You can start getting histories, and maybe at the same time, if your technician is getting a history, you can be starting to do the exam. Some of that, you don't even have to touch the cat, right? You can get body condition score a lot of times just from looking at them. You can look to see if they have any lameness. You can see if they're jumping okay. You can sometimes see if they have vision deficits. You can sort of get a baseline of what their coat looks like. Some of that stuff you can just be doing visually. And then as that cat takes a rest, you can maybe start working head and neck. And so maybe it's not going to be so traditional in that, okay, we're done with the history, I'm going to move on to the physical exam now, but making it more of a fluid exam so that you can be talking and touching at the same time to make the most of your time together. But for all of you doing 15-minute exams, you're rock stars because that's really hard.
All right, let's launch our poll number 4. Here it comes. Sedation for exams. What is your drug of choice for cats that need sedation for their exams? Is it trazodone, acepromazine, gabapentin, or dexdomitor? While they're answering that, how important, or in a great world, how often do you know ahead of time that you're going to need to sedate a patient? How far into it?
That's such a great question. And don't you wish you had that every single time? But that's why it's so important to do two things. One is anytime you work with a patient who needs some kind of anti-anxiety medication or more in-depth sedation, we have to document it. And even and more importantly, is document if it didn't work well, right? So as an example, Tommy came in, he loved churu, he hated olives, he likes to be examined on the floor, he didn't like classical music or whatever. Blood draw went great in the room, but next time we need gabapentin because as soon as we started the blood pressure, he got stressed. Something like that. It's important to do that. The second thing is that when we are questioning new clients coming to our practices, it's incredibly important to have either in a pre-visit questionnaire or something they're filling out, or even a verbal question. Has your cat ever been stressed at a previous clinic or exam? Because even if the client says, oh yeah, totally stressed, or they had to muzzle, or they had to take him in the back, or it might not even be that, oh yes, they had to use gabapentin and trazodone together. They may not know that, but if there's cue words, right, that are signs of stress, then that's something where maybe we can work with a previous clinic and get some gabapentin even beforehand, right? It's not always possible, but that's in a dream world. I'd love to hear what everybody's using.
Well, I don't think you're going to be surprised. 87%.
The G word.
87% for gabapentin.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, how did we live without this drug? I don't know. How did I do anything 20 years ago where we didn't have gabapentin? I'm glad to hear so many people are using it. And dexdomitor, I think, is equally common in hospital for injectable sedation. So let's talk through this a little bit about fear and pain reduction. What is the most common cause of aggression in cats at veterinary practices today? It's not us, actually, right? It's, to be honest, it's fear. We often think, and cats this is something I regret doing. When there would be a cat that would come in that would be what we would term fractious, and then we would label them, right? Bad cat, fractious cat. And they'd have all these stars and X's and all this stuff all over their record when they were just scared, right? So we need to think about it a little bit differently and know that we have lots of things at our disposal to help our cats, because failing to prepare is preparing to fail. My dad always used to say that to me. I'm sorry for bringing some of my childhood here, but that's what we used to say before our track meets. So if there's any history about previous behavior, like I mentioned, that stressor, that trigger word, we need to encourage them to have something on board. Cat carrier training, we'll talk about that in a minute. It's an imperative to getting our cats here. Pre-visit medications, meropotence. So if there is any kind of motion sickness that's been reported, that'll be very helpful. Alprazolam, a lot of people use, but gabapentin by far is sort of that drug of choice for pre-visit. And remember, it's not just 4 hours before that exam that day. We can preload and give it the night before and then the morning of the exam. And that loading dose actually gives us even more beautiful kind of calming sedation for that cat. And pheromones obviously are also helpful. They just don't have that intensity, right, of calming as we would with gabapentin, but synergistically, they work beautifully together. Now, one soapbox I have to get on, so humor me for 30 seconds here, is this drug, I'm going to put a big X through. Please, please, please avoid this with cats. It is a sedative. It does not reduce anxiety. It's not anxiolytic. This limits motor in cats, but allows sensory perception. So the only way I can kind of describe it is if anybody's seen this Criminal Minds, it's awful. I don't know why I'm even bringing this up. It's a show where basically this serial killer made these human women into dolls so they could see everything that was going on. They were scared. They heard all these triggers, but they couldn't move. That's what a cat feels like. So a cat can hear things that are stressful, can see things that are stressful, but can't move to defend itself or to escape. They have increased sensitivity to noises, and they actually can even become more reactive or aggressive. So I know everybody's kind of probably laughing and like,
wow, didn't expect that turn we were taking there tonight.
But that's what it is. It's that they feel, even though they're aware sensory wise of everything going on, they have none to limited motor. It's a really awful place for them to live with sedation. So again, keep in mind, this is not the place for acepromazine. Indications, though, for when we do give a sedative or, again, something to reduce anxiety is when we see fear, anxiety, or aggression. If you're going to be doing a procedure that will take longer without chemical restraint, nail trim, wound repair, anything, again, that if we were trying to do that just with a local or restraint, it's going to take longer. If we anticipate it's going to be painful or that this patient's heading to surgery, that can be very helpful to have gabapentin on board. And when gentle restraint does not provide safety for the team, we have to keep ourselves equally safe when we're working with these patients. So a couple different options also besides gabapentin here. Dexdomitor, I'm sure a lot of you are using. Ideally, it's a beautiful option because it's reversible. All right, anything we put into the body, if I can use a reversible agent, I'm going to pick that, right? Just for that added level of safety. Dexdomitor with a mu agonist is a nice combination. So morphine or hydromorphone. You can also, if you want to, add in midazolam, which also has a little sedating and muscle relaxant effect. And then there's also ketamine, right? If we need additional sedation. I don't have time tonight to go through all the different protocols, but here is a wonderful website that you can hopefully take down or screenshot that will give you all of the protocols that are really great and safe to use with cats. So I'll leave that up just for a second. And again, feel free to email me at the end. I'm happy to send these.
All right, our final polling question for tonight. Let's go ahead and launch this and see what everybody says. According to market research studies, what is the number one reason that cats don't see the veterinarian? Clients too busy, stress of the carrier, we don't need veterinary care, or concerns about over-vaccinating? What's the number one reason? Dr. Marks, we'll see what everybody says in a minute, but to me, the most alarming is the idea that clients think they don't need veterinary care for their cats. I'm hoping that's a myth that's getting dispelled.
I know. And, unfortunately, especially during the pandemic, there were a lot of first-time pet parents, like people in their 60s and 70s who had never had a pet in their life that are adopting cats. And a lot of these first-time pet parents, not just the 60-year-olds, but 20-year-olds too, have this misconception that cats are super independent and they just don't get sick if they're indoors. They don't need care. They'll kind of tell when they're going to, when they don't feel good, which cats do tell us when they don't feel good. The problem is that's usually when they're in the most advanced stage of liver or kidney failure, right? Because we just don't understand, and we haven't done a great job educating pet parents of what subtle signs of illness are in cats, especially, again, these pandemic pet parents. So I'm curious to see what everybody else is thinking here of why we're not seeing cats. There's over 80 million cats in the US. We only see about a third of them. Now, this is a study, so you're going to tell us what the actual answer, according to the study, was in a second, but everybody's guessing, or at least almost 2/3 of the people are guessing stress of the cat carrier. But coming in second is don't need veterinary care. I know. And I think, again, I don't think people are wrong, because that is the perception of the cat parent. But yes, it is the stress of the cat carrier. And, we have to really change our thinking and be proactive from day one, getting pet parents to understand why the cat carrier needs to be part of everyday life. And that's how we build this bond. Cat carrier training is essential. And so from day one with kittens, we need to encourage cat parents to leave the carrier open. It needs to be part of the furniture. And people say to me, I'm not going to have this plastic box be, my coffee table. No, but you could get a sleepy pod and it's going to look really cool in your house, right? There's lots of different options out there, aesthetically more pleasing, right? If a client says that. But we want the cat carrier open. We want fleece bedding. We want to be able to feed and give treats or feed their regular diet in the carrier, and place that carrier out permanently so cats can use it as a hiding space or just a chill, relaxing spa-like environment. It also helps if you have either a plug-in of a pheromone or you spray a feline pheromone spray around the carrier so that it can also reduce anxiety. This helps cats see the cat carrier, again, as part of every day, not as a stress trigger, not as the, oh my gosh, what's mom getting out of the garage that's covered in leaves and cat pee, and I haven't seen it since last year and it's freezing cold and I'm not going to go in there. I'm going to hide under the bed. That's the reaction, right, that we typically get. Or the cat parent who calls last minute to cancel because they can't catch their cat. Those are things that are not only just stressful to the cat, but to the cat parent. And then they associate us with stress and they don't come in. So don't forget, the other thing that we need to show cat parents, especially in the hospital, is this: we don't want to carry by the handle. I wish cat carriers didn't have that. It's so tempting to carry by that. What we want to do is instead use outstretched arms and carry from underneath with a towel on top. When we carry by the handle, we're carrying like this typically as we're walking fast. And that poor cat inside is jiggling all over the place, getting motion sickness and also very stressed. So outstretched arms, carry a towel on top, hopefully with pheromones, and it's a much more smooth and peaceful ride for those cats getting to where they're going. The other thing about the cat carrier, and one thing we often forget, is that those cats have to leave our practice and get home. And we often get calls from those cat parents saying, my cat was there for surgery and now it's getting beat up by the other 3 cats and I have, World War III at home. So we need to have a peaceful return so those cat parents want to come back to see us. That means if there's unfamiliar materials, you left a towel from your hospital in there, unfamiliar odors, if there's remember, anesthesia can linger for 24 to 48 hours. That can be a stressor, not always, but it can be a stressor for those cats. So we want to encourage those cat parents to bring something that smells like home when they pick up. So that t-shirt or that toy or that towel can go right in the carrier with them. Pheromones are a must in the carrier and then also at home. And then give those cats some time for interactions. Don't bring your cat home from a spay or neuter and tell those cat clients to just throw them into the living room with the other cats. Give them time to acclimate, just like if you're introducing a new cat. Maybe that cat goes into the guest room or your bedroom and the other cats sniff under the door. Give them some time. They have to reacclimate to those new sights and smells. The other big reason we have to teach about cat carrier training is it's not just us that those cats come out to see, right? Emergencies happen. So if there's a fire, they have to move, they have a sudden travel, a death in the family. We want to be able to teach these cat clients ways to safely transport their cat from one place to the other. Again, another big reason for cat carrier training. That includes making sure that cats are secure in the car or wherever they're going. So again, this is as obviously a sleepy pod secured by a seatbelt. There are other different types of restraint devices that cat carriers can be used with. But if a cat is not going into a seatbelt, at bare minimum, the least amount of motion sickness for a cat is behind the passenger seat on the floor. So in the middle section or the kind of back section of a car, on the floorboards behind the passenger seat is where there'll be the least amount of motion in a car. Finally, we want to give cat parents community. So at your hospital, think about the things that will make cat parents want to come back besides that easy return to home. Things like forward booking, right? So they know exactly the next time they need to see us. Connecting digitally. If you aren't doing Catter Days on your social media platforms, please try to, because cat parents all over the world look for Catter Day posts, and that's a great way to connect. Become cat friendly, whether you're getting certified as a hospital or becoming a cat friendly practitioner. We've got lots of cat friendly information in the PYP program and lots more to come next year. We talked about feline only hours, making sure your online pharmacy has feline specific products that cat parents feel, again, that we aren't just second class citizens, there's a feline focus. And make sure your website has feline specific resources, not everything about dogs. And oh yeah, by the way, cats get diabetes too. We want to make sure there's a lot of cat resources there. Here are some great websites and resources for you as practitioners that have tons of great cat specific information. Feel free to screenshot, or again, I can send this to you, especially if you are really curious about upping your anesthesia game and sedation. The ACVA has a lot of great information, as well as that other website I gave you for protocols. So I'm going to leave this up here for a minute, Matt. I know we have a few more minutes. This is my personal email. Feel free to email me with any questions, comments. If you'd like a copy of this presentation for other team members, we're really glad that you joined. But I'll turn it back over to you, Matt, if there's anything that I can answer.
You bet. There's tons of stuff in the chat. We'll try to get just a couple in here before we get out of here. We want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Reminder, you'll get your CE certificates within 48 hours in your email. Check your spam if you don't see it. And please, if you're not part of it already, look for ways to join, and we'll make sure you get emails about joining Perfect Your Practice. We send out weekly emails with quick tips and advice. We do these webinars, podcasts, videos, all sorts of stuff like that. So we hope you've enjoyed the night. Real quick, Dr. Marks, Amanda wrote, what are your thoughts on feline exam room sizes? Our primary feline exam room is smaller than our other rooms. Do you think they're more comfortable in a larger area, or does that overwhelm them?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. And to be honest, I don't think that anyone has really truly studied the perfect size of space that a cat needs. You know, if you think about what cats actually like to be in enclosed spaces and kind of hide and tuck under towels. So I will tell you, I've done really effective feline exams and diagnostics in a space that, again, that's the size of a closet, because the cat felt really good because we were using all the techniques I mentioned earlier tonight. Now, if you have more space that allows you to have vertical spaces like cat trees or a climbing wall, or the ability for them to go and sit in a bed over in the corner, awesome. We don't always have that kind of space in our hospitals. So I think what's more important than the space is that you're using all these gentle handling and low stress techniques, thinking about all their senses and your movements, and making sure that, again, you're kind of keeping in mind their body language and reacting to it. It's a really kind of delicate dance between us and our cat patients. And so I think you could do it, you know, in a teeny little closet. If you were doing those kind of strategies, you'll have a really successful exam.
There was a lot in the chat earlier about handling the cat carrier, using the cat carrier. You answered a lot of that late in the webinar, but a couple of people mentioned that when the cat comes in, they'll weigh the cat in the carrier. Great. And then later on, they'll just reweigh the carrier once the cat is out to get that weight.
Love that tip. The most important thing is getting the weight. So I love that tip. Yep, it's a great thing. You know, if a cat's already out, even better. But if that works for your workflow, I love it.
Last comment, I'll say, people were commenting back and forth. Avery wrote to somebody who was wondering about the 15 minutes, that what they try to do is give the owners the option to just drop off the cat. And then it becomes a drop-off appointment. We can sedate, do what's needed between other appointments, see other appointments, let the sedation kick in, and then come back. So the only trick to that is you got to have other staff on to monitor them. So only if you can work that out, and that helps with their 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's a great tool. You know, some hospitals have the staff. Right now, I would say most hospitals are a bit short on team members, and so that may not be as feasible. The other just thing to keep in mind with drop-off appointments is it sometimes can add a little bit more time to your day, because you do have to do some kind of release, right? Because that pet parent's not there. So whether that's a phone release or an in-person release. And so just keep that in mind when you're planning out your day, that we can't just send those cats home, because that really diminishes the value we're giving them when they're with us in the hospital. And that's sort of what we found out with the pandemic, is pet parents didn't connect to us as much when they couldn't see what was going on. So whether you FaceTime them when you're doing the exam, or do another telehealth service so that they can see some video, take pictures, or set up a time to do a 10-minute release, so you know that the pet parent's going to answer their phone, but just be efficient in that way too.
Last question. This is a personal one I thought of as you were doing the cat care stuff. Are there sometimes, because we tell the client, here's what you need to do, furniture, leave it out, treats, all these things. But if that cat is already like, I know that carrier no good, do you sometimes need to start with a new carrier?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you need to start with a lot more because unfortunately, there's a lot of cats out there that are young adults to seniors who didn't have cat carrier training and already have these established triggers. Remember, any fearful memory for a cat, if it's a cat carrier, a cat outside, a loud noise, whatever it is, and for us too, it's stored in our amygdala forever. So as soon as that cat sees that fearful memory imprint again, i.e. the cat carrier, the amygdala goes, whoa, remember this guy? And you're like, yeah. And then it escalates each time. So we've had potentially years of fearful escalation from that visual. So yes, I mean, I would start with a brand new carrier in a new place with a new treat and pheromones and potentially even gabapentin or trazodone to help them adjust, feed them in the carrier, fleece bedding. I mean, I would be playing Bob Marley all day long. Anything we can do to make that space as comfortable as possible. But I would definitely get rid of the previous carrier or donate it to somebody or a shelter so that we don't continually put that fearful memory. That desensitization of like in your face that we used to think of worked with dogs and cats is absolutely not the training technique we want to use. So finding a way to do more positive conditioning and getting rid of anything that's a fearful trigger will be best.
Everybody, we're out of time. We want to thank you so much for being with us and if you're not already, join the Perfect Your Practice program. Thank you to our sponsor, Zoetis, powered by AAFP. Our next webinar is coming up on October 25th. That's going to be on cat diagnostics, again, hosted by our very own Dr. Natalie Marks. Thank you all so much for being with us tonight. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great evening.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.